Welcome to the Tucson Bitcoin podcast. Today my guest is Aleks Svetski, and this is an awesome conversation. I always enjoy sitting down with Aleks and talking, hearing his perspective on things. His writings and podcast have been really, helpful for me in shaping my, development and my Bitcoin journey. But in this conversation we talk about a bunch of stuff. We talk about, surviving the incoming storm. We talk about future hyper Bitcoinization, we just get into it talking about all these things. And he's had some great episodes on his podcast recently. I really enjoyed the one he had with Michael Krieger. This is a journey that we're on, and I think we're all growing and learning, and that is especially true for me. What ultimately, seems to be the case for a lot of Bitcoiners like Aleks is this importance on, growth, personal development, and really seeking for what is true, rather than just going on with whatever the narrative is. And so it was really fun diving into it, and I hope you enjoy this conversation with him. And we're recording. Good to have you on again.
Hey buddy, thank you. It's been a while. I think the last time we spoke, I was in this dank apartment in Berlin, and it was winter, and I was pissed off with the world, of course. And Berlin had kind of like doubled down on their moron lockdowns, and everything was illegal to walk outside practically. And it was just before I escaped to Brazil. So it's a very different place where I'm at now.
Yeah, you've been all over the place.
Yeah, dude. All over the place. So now I'm in Miami, it could not be more of a contrast. It's actually shit. It's almost a year on. I can't believe it. It's been a year since we last spoke. Fucking hell.
Yeah, and it was cool to meet you in person too at the Max Kaiser event. That was an awesome surprise.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It was a cool little last minute thing, but I'm glad I was able to pull it off and met you. Who else did I meet over there that I hadn't met before? There was a couple people that I'd met that I hadn't met before, but you were the sort of the standout. And it was a good little event.
Yeah, we had our whole Arizona Citadel crew out there, and we're building something cool out here.
Yeah, you are, man. It's a cool place. And then I mean, I don't know much about Arizona more broadly, but I guess I saw that some Arizona sheriff came out the other day saying, as long as I'm fucking sheriff, we're not mandating anything, blah blah blah. So it's a cool place, man. At least if that's the kind of energy that's there.
Yeah, it's a well-kept secret. Like Texas is a big meme, but there are a bunch of Larpers out there. We do real in Arizona.
All right, I'll let Punk a little snow.
Yeah, the Texans. I have another show called Toxic Airwaves, and Skeef co-hosts it with me, and he says the Texans think that they're cool because they had a fort 200 years ago, but they just LARP. And I think that's a great quote.
Well, there we go. I guess time will tell, my friends. We will see. The crunch time is happening in the next 5 years, so we'll see who's actually LARPing and who's actually got the balls between their legs.
Yeah, it's definitely like a time for balls. In non-compliance, it's pretty real with the stuff that they're pushing and mandating right now. And watching what's happening in Australia, it kind of seems like that's the playbook that they're going to try and play elsewhere too. So what's your outlook looking at these next 5 years?
Well, the thing is, whether it's a playbook, and this is sort of, I did a pod recently, which I'm going to release, I think, tomorrow or the day after. It was with Laser Huddle, Mark Moss, Liberty Blitz, Michael Krieger, Joel from Untapped Growth, and it was the herbalist who asked us to put it together, and we did that. It was a really good fucking conversation, and I kind of took the devil's advocate position, saying that look, there doesn't need to be a playbook, there doesn't need to be an agenda. This kind of stuff manifests when the values hierarchies are distorted, and when you have when a society and decision making is not anchored into real world consequences. You actually end up going down this path, whether there's an agenda or not. Like this is where you end up. So if we can explain the derangement of the world, in the absence of an agenda, I think we've got a lot more chance of waking people up. We don't have to tell them that there's men behind the curtain, because I'm sure there is. I'm sure there is always like an attempt at an agenda. And I mean, the fact of the matter is, we're all pushing some sort of agenda at the individual level, right? You know, my agenda is I want to accumulate more Bitcoin and I want to take down the nation state. That's my conspiracy. You know, the person down the road for me, their conspiracy is, you know, they want to build a family, find a wife, build a family, and, you know, work 9 to 5 for the next 40 years and retire. You know, someone else's conspiracy is that, you know, they want to get laid, whatever. So everyone's always pushing an agenda. Everyone's got a conspiracy, and we sort of have all of these agendas and pathways clashing. And the macro of that, or the what's like the complex crowd madness of the crowd's version of that moves in a particular direction, dependent on like a compounded effect of all of the individual incentives and the individual decisions that are being made. And this is why I always like, for me, it's the most important thing about Bitcoin is like you fix those base incentives, and all of a sudden the madness of the crowd starts to, you know, move into a different direction, because, you know, that's adjusted. So anyway, I just feel like there's a, whether it's an agenda or not, it doesn't matter. But, you know, places like Australia have suffered disproportionately in this period, particularly over the last, you know, few months, as we've seen, because they value societally and individually safety more than they value growth. You know, that is a common trait that you'll find in Australia. Or they value, sorry, safety more than personal responsibility is probably a better way to put it. So when you value you know, safety over personal responsibility, and safety is the thing that's being sold to you by the service provider, that is the government, who has a monopoly on the delivery of safety, you can see how you would end up there. And then you layer that problem, that values, inverted values hierarchy in that country. You layer that with a place that has been able to accumulate and accrue capital, like real capital, because it was built originally on Western values. You have a very rich nation of a very rich middle class that doesn't feel the impact of the bad decisions that are being made. So they continue making those bad decisions. Because if you're a middle class person in Australia, you're generally okay. You know, you've got you get your little mortgage holiday, so you don't have to pay for that. You know, they'll give you some helicopter money, so you'll feel good. You know, last year what they did to keep everyone happy is all the businesses, they gave them, like, the government basically paid, I think it was 50 to 80% of the payroll for businesses for about a 6-month period. So, you know, it was enough to like keep people okay. And when you've got that killer combination of an economic cushion large enough to you know, give you the illusion of there being no consequences for bad decisions, couple that with an inverted values hierarchy in which shit like safety and protection and comfort are valued higher than personal responsibility, you know, growth, adventure, expansion, you get Australia, you get Canada, you get New Zealand, and here we are.
Yeah, that's a really, really interesting thought, as far as like they're not necessarily being an overarching conspiracy and just having a bunch of people detached from reality. And I like that. Because
Yeah.
that's what I see. That's what I see. Like, we have these zombie like people screeching at the top of their lungs, demanding these totalitarian policies, and there's just no attachment to reality in the.
That's it. If these dumbass zombies, if these lemmings were fucking dying of starvation, they would be stopping straight away. Like, so for example, I mean, everyone knows my story, I think, at this point, about like that stupid SJW bitch that I got stuck with in Germany for a little while. And she's the quintessential example of a supporter of lockdowns and masks and shit, where she got money from the government. She was getting money given to her by her parents. You know, all she was doing was staying at home all day, watching Disney, playing with her fucking puzzles, you know, taking drugs, and escaping to her gay friend's place so they could all take drugs together. basically doing what she said people shouldn't do. So this was the hypocrisy that drove me crazy. So she would like say, everyone's got to be locked down. We have to win this. We have to beat the virus, and everyone should just be close the business. But I was like, the fuck's gonna pay the bills, you moron? Oh, but that doesn't matter. The government can give everyone money. And then she's the one on weekends, disappearing on a Friday and coming back on the Monday, drugged off her fucking face. Because she had an economic cushion that allowed her to not face the reality of not working and of things shutting down. But if you starve these motherfuckers and they have nothing to like, in two ways. Number one, you stop giving them money so they don't have anything to buy with. But number two is if those businesses that, where the supply chain, where their dependence on food and Uber Eats and everything fucking comes from, that starts to shut down. You see these they won't be talking about lockdown. They won't be talking about any of that shit. And that's the problem when you have an affluent state that can still, appease these fucking lemmings. You get the supporters, like, in many ways, like, as much as everyone wants to blame, like, the Klaus Schwabs of the world, man, I blame the fucking lemming that's wearing the mask next door supporting that, because that's the fucking teeth. Like, Klaus Schwab is a fucking nobody. Had he not had his little lemmings running around supporting the lockdowns and everything, none of this shit would happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think that's like one of the powerful things we're seeing happening in Arizona is we're seeing like a mass exodus from the school systems, and we're seeing people move towards creating circular economies of sorts.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, not with Bitcoin. We're working on that, pretty hard. But I think those are really encouraging things, that there's a large portion of the population, even though they're probably misguided on a lot of different issues, that are seeing that they can't just continue to go on with how things are, and are taking action to prevent those people from having power.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. So in a complex system, you'll always get these silver linings, right? Is because there's no way, like, a complex system cannot be directed. You can attempt to go and create feedback loops, like, right. So if you understand that, if I push this button, or if I put this pressure here on the complex system, I could create a feedback loop. But it's impossible for me to know that in creating this feedback loop of fear here, what else is going to happen in the system that either counteracts or counterbalances or whatever. So, like, if you look at the world economy, or all human beings and human action as a collective, it has been for the last couple hundred years trying to find its way through without a fucking anchor to reality, because we have lived in a state of just pure fucking fiat, right? And one could argue that Bitcoin is actually the silver lining of that. Had we not had fiat, we wouldn't have Bitcoin. And that's that kind of, the silver lining, that kind of, the system produces it because there's a distortion in one area, and it does its best to balance and counterbalance and adjust in the other area for the system itself to save itself from complete elimination, basically.
Yeah, that's super interesting to look at that. And I think that that works until they get complete totalitarian control and are able to coerce a population. Like, I struggle to see how that really played out in like the Soviet Union, outside of there being black markets for people to, continue to eat. But
Well, yeah, but see, that's again, so the black markets is, that's the system trying to correct itself. That's effectively what it was, right? So you had this emergence of black market, uh, I mean, free market, we should call it,
yeah,
exchange occurring, without or outside of the controlled restriction, because they were trying to control a complex system, which, as you've noted, you can't do. The interesting thing, one of the topics that came up when we were doing that little pod last week with the boys was, do we live in a era where there is enough data and there is enough, like, AI and smarts and all this sort of shit to potentially, for a totalitarian state or a regime, to actually uh, enact a, you know or exert enough control over a complex system for them to actually, do it this time, and for us to become, the final social credit system. And I don't know if I have a clear answer to that. I guess this kind of ties into the topic we wanted to sort of hit on today. Is like, what does this all look like, and is it possible for a totalitarian like state to actually even succeed? Like, could that happen in a world in which there's enough like AI software programs, et cetera, to run that, and where we actually, end up in a gulag? Or does that also fucking fall apart because, the hubris of running a centrally planned existence just, it doesn't work? So I don't know if you've got a comment on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think like the way I look at it is that these centrally controlled systems will always fail. Like we
Hmm.
know command control economies are extremely destructive, and there's a lot of hype right now about China being super, threatening and problematic to the world's freedom, but I
Hmm.
see it as more of a house of cards than the United States is even, which is pretty impressive. Um, but so I feel hopeful on that front, and I think there's just so many, the problem with like this globalist idea is that there's so many people of different cultures and value sets and aspirations that it's hard to bring everybody into one system. And then even if you go higher up to the people that would be implementing this, they have conflicting goals as well and will fight.
Yeah.
So like George Soros, was wrote like some scathing report against BlackRock, and those are like two incredibly powerful people slash institutions, uh, that might be, eventually duking it out. And I think that's, should be really hopeful to people seeing, the elites kind of go at it and fight. But
Let's Can I pull you up there? Can we not call them elites? Can we call them parasites?
yeah,
I'm on a campaign. Like I was talking to Jimmy Song about this. I'm on a campaign to change the phraseology around elite. Like, to me, when I think of elite, I think of Bruce Lee or Usain Bolt or like Alexander the Great or something like that. Like heroes, people who are fucking transforming the world. Like Bitcoin, Satoshi was an elite. These fucking scum pieces of shit cunt fuckers, like, that are like your Soroses and your Christine Lagardes. Like, they do not deserve that classification. They are parasites. Simple as that. Like, I fucking hate them. They're the bugs of the bugs of the bugs of the fucking worms, man. That's all they are.
I like that.
Thank you. Yeah, I just like I do this on every podcast now. When everyone brings up the word elites, I'm like, no, no, no. Let's change this. They're parasites. That's it. And that's a
So,
nice way of putting it.
yeah, the sociopathic, anti-human control freaks in power.
That's it. Yeah, that's it. They're too pathetic to fucking have any influence over their own life, so they want to project it onto everyone else's life. Fuck them.
Yeah, the last year's been really good for me diving into anarchism and learning a bit about it. Like probably a year prior, I would have called myself a classical liberal, and I
Hmm.
resonated a lot with, what Mises wrote in his book Liberalism, or like what Hayek talked about with like this idea of limited government. And now it just seems like all authority, to some degree is or to a large degree is illegitimate, because it's just people thinking that they have superiority and can rule others, which is just so backwards.
Well, maybe I can challenge you on this one. So I think natural authority exists. Natural authority is a subset of competence, right? So if you want to run a business, for example, you need to have authority over others. Like, there's specific people who are more competent in particular roles that, have an earned authority, in which they, without that earned authority, they can't, quote unquote, govern or manage a process better. So, like, if you look at, the concept of a master and an apprentice, that master has authority over the apprentice, and he can rule over the apprentice. But it's a voluntary relationship in many ways, in the sense that the apprentice wants to learn. So the master becomes the authority and becomes the ruler over the apprentice. Um, Same as a master over a school, over a dojo. there's a I've done a lot of reading over like Japanese history, particularly in the last year and a half, or whatever it's been, or the last year, and there was a natural hierarchy that emerged, as opposed to what I would call today we have a fiat hierarchy, which is not it doesn't emerge from competence, it emerges by decree. Or it is not, it doesn't even emerge, it is bestowed by decree. So what you don't get is, you don't get um, natural authority, you don't get competent authority, you get the fucking dumbest of the dumb at the top of the hierarchy,
Hmm.
uh, thinking that they can tell people what the fuck to do because they have some fiat version of authority. And I wrote about this actually in I don't know if you started reading the Jordan Peterson series yet, but I started writing a list of basically took his 12 rules for life, and I'm taking each rule and distilling the lessons, or the intent of the rule, and looking at it through the Bitcoin lens. And the first one I talked about specifically this, it's called Bitcoin territory and hierarchy. And I honestly do believe that hierarchy has such an important place, and authority has an important place. But because humans are multidimensional, like, hierarchies need to sort of grow and collapse, and they need to evolve and adjust. Like, we've got these stale fiat by decree hierarchies at the moment, which are deformed. They're fucking top heavy. They're full of incompetence. They're full of fucking morons. And that is a function of the fact that we can actually lie to ourselves and kick the can down the road on economic consequence, right? Like, if you can lie to yourself, this is the Australia example yet again, which is happening everywhere in the world, is if you make a bad decision, but you have no way of knowing that the consequences of that you have no way of knowing if it was a bad decision because you didn't feel the consequences. Like, if you passed the cost to somebody else, you don't know you're making a bad decision. It's like putting your hand on a stove. There's a reason we have pain receptors. It's so that you take your fucking hand off before you burn your whole goddamn arm off. And at the moment, we've structured society in a way that we've removed the pain receptor, and people are putting their hand on the stove and they're like, oh, it's okay, I don't feel any pain. And you're fucking burning your whole damn hand off. So that's sort of, you know, we've deformed authority because there's no uh, recourse to consequence at the moment. So anyway, that's just something where I think there's a, because I did the whole swing with you as well. Like, I did the whole anarchism thing, and I'm still largely an anarchist, but there's got to be levels of authority or layers of authority that are earned. And I think this is an interesting next area for me that I'm also exploring, which um, I think will be, I don't know, it'll manifest in an interesting way through Bitcoin.
Yeah, I really like that. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I was kind of like puzzling in my head is the idea of like there has to be an authority in a family structure, which is like the
Yeah.
most basic. Like like a
Yep.
kid and a parent are not on equal footing, and
Absolutely.
so how do we define those roles or relationships in a way that's not abusive or and I think that's kind of an interesting concept to get into. But yeah, I mean, I've tried to go down the rabbit hole of being self-sustainable, and in the process have really seen the importance of the division of labor, of certain people are better at other things than others.
Yeah, man.
And so
Mm, go on.
yeah, and so I do think that concept of earned authority versus either conquered authority or bestowed authority, assumed authority, is an interesting concept for sure, because you want the most competent, best producers at the top making decisions. So
That's it. That's it. Because they've earned that shit. If they've made good decisions with their own shit, like, there's a great saying from Jim Rohn who says that make the most of what you have. Like, oh, I can't remember now. I'm butchering the fuck out of it, but it was something along the lines of like, take responsibility and do the best with what you have while it's small, and you'll be given more to be responsible for. And that's the progression of everything, man. Like, that is natural progression. It's not because I'm fucking George Bush's son that I should be the fucking president. No, you're a fucking monkey. Like, that's not how it works. Like, and the very fact that the public apparatus exists, it leans towards making fiat authority a thing instead of owned authority. And that right there is, again, why Bitcoin fixes this, is that Bitcoin breaks that. Because when you make bad economic decisions in Bitcoin, you have no way to get bailed out. You fucking lose everything. You know, you fuck it up for other people. They come, they find you, they burn you at the stake, and you know, we someone else rises from the ranks. So it's all about consequence. You know, I think the more I think about this, the more like I start to see the almost the wisdom in like things like in the Middle East, which is you steal something, you get your fucking hand chopped off, right? The hand that you stole with. So it's like there's a real consequence for stealing. Whereas if the consequence of stealing is like a little slap on the wrist, you might not do that. So it's oh sorry, you might just go ahead and do that again and again and again. And that's where I don't know, I just it might sound harsh, but like um yeah, I think Bitcoin's gonna usher in a world where you make bad life choices, bad governance choices, bad management choices, you know, there's no one else to blame but you, and you can't cover it up. And as a result, you know, we will get these dynamic hierarchies that emerge, and you know, quickly get cleaned out if they're not functional, so that something stronger emerges instead of these, you know, 100-year-old, 200-year-old shithole versions of it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really interesting to think about what that looks like. I don't think Eric Voorhees would succeed very well in a society like that.
Correct. Yeah, correct. Exactly. Eric Voorhees would be like thrown the fuck out very quickly.
Yeah. We're, so how do you see like the movement into a society like that from where we're at right now with this mass delusion detachment from reality?
And it's like things have to break. That's the problem. Like until so this coming back to our consequence theme here is like if you're not feeling the consequences of bad decisions, what are you gonna do? You're gonna keep doing the stupid thing that you're doing, right? And I think we've felt some of it, and those of us who are, I guess, more intelligent or more nuanced or more sensitive to seeing the world potentially break down under the weight of its own stupidity, we are the first ones to call it out. And you know, as any intelligent person would do, like we try and warn other people what we're doing here, but we also, you know, protect ourselves, which is what we do through buying Bitcoin. Um, but by and large, because the rest of these Muppets and fucking lemmings on a one-way path off the cliff, in many ways, maybe a large enough number of them need to fall down off the cliff, and you know, the rest of the lemmings that are on the way walking off might need to actually look down before they jump and realize that there's a bunch of fucking corpses down there, and then stop. So in other ways, so in other words, like I'm trying to make up an analogy here of I don't know if it gets better, and I don't know if that this transition is one that is pretty in any way. I think it's ugly as fuck, and I think that yeah, the like the tragedy is it's just. I mean, I read When Money Dies like earlier this year, and it's like we're just repeating the same shit over and over again. Like the mistakes of the central bankers, they fucked everything up in Germany. Um, so the Jews went and bought hard assets, and it wasn't just the Jews. There was other intelligent people that did that, and then they were the ones who got blamed for the collapse of the middle class. So you know, I think we're going to have to think about how to protect ourselves from that blame, because I mean, Bitcoiners are at an interesting point of confluence, right? We're the anti-vaxxers, we're the anti-maskers, we're the anti-lockdowners, and we're going to be disproportionately rich. So everything's going to be our fault. Um, so I don't know. We've got to do as much as we can to I guess wake up those who have the ingredients to be woken up, and then prepare ourselves to protect us and those we care about from the Lemmings who will be blaming us. And we're just gonna have to ride this shit out because yeah, I don't know, it's not gonna be pretty.
Yeah.
Not a very good answer, but fuck.
No, I think that's really interesting. So two concepts there, like protecting yourself from the eventual demonization. I mean, we've already seen this. You know, it's a thing that's happening. You know, it's definitely there's this weird human behavior or characteristic that people really struggle to feel empathy for others until they're experiencing what it is, and so um, you know, being labeled a domestic terrorist has definitely been, you know, I think eye opening for a lot of people of realizing, you know, what's been happening for years with, you know, the throwing people in cages for, you know, not victimless crimes and, you know, all of the other stuff that's been happening, you know, to then be treated like shit, just like, you know, they've totally been complacent with watching others. But yeah, there's something I really hate politics more than anything. Um, there's few things I hate more than politics, but I've been, you know, trying to reach out and network within, you know, libertarian groups locally because I think those are good people to network with, and I think that's, um, you know, they're the people kind of like you were talking about that have more of the ingredients to wake up. And
Yeah, man. Yeah. That's the thing. So have you read Isaiah's Job? Yeah.
mm,
Okay, so this is it's a short essay. You'll find it on Mises or Mises, sorry, .org. And it's by the author is Albert J. Nock, and it's like an essay that was basically inspired by that inspired Murray Rothbard and Rand and a lot of the early libertarians and things like that. And it basically, the premise of it is the idea of Isaiah is like the prophet of God, and you know he's told by God not to go and preach to the masses, but to preach to the remnant, and the remnant being defined as, you know, these people who exist who you don't know that they're out there, and like, you know, sort of God gives Isaiah two guarantees. He said, guarantee number one is that the remnant exists and that these people are out there, and guarantee number two is that you won't find them, they will find you. And he basically tells Isaiah that don't go out and preach to the masses, because to appeal to the masses, you need to dilute your message. You need to like make it more nice and, you know, easy to understand and all this sort of shit. He said, what you'll do is you'll appeal to the masses who don't matter, but you'll actually, you won't pass the smell test of the remnant who do matter, and you become effectively a fake prophet. And it's funny because I only read this recently, but I've had this personal tendency for a long time. Like I was one of the first people to get up and say, "Fuck mass adoption in Bitcoin. I care about selective adoption, and I care about the right people having Bitcoin. I don't give a fuck about the losers who don't want to buy it." And I, you know, I even wrote that article last year, which was called "Do Not Buy Bitcoin." You know, if you don't believe in it, I'm not here to convince you. Go fuck yourself. Go, please buy Australian dollars, buy US dollars, please buy gold. You know, go fuck yourself. More Bitcoin for me, more Bitcoin for those who matter. So I guess tying it back like to what we just mentioned is we're effectively describing the process of building relationships with the remnant, and the remnant is most likely going to be found in those libertarian circles, in the ANCAP circles. And I mean, I think Bitcoin is the ultimate remnant, but like that's where it all is. And that's where we should be putting our time and energy. We don't need to dilute, like crypto is for the masses, Bitcoin is for the remnant. That's probably a really good like way to frame this. In fact, I'm probably going to tweet that. But that's the like, I think it's a really powerful distinction.
yeah, I think that's huge. It's yeah, that's definitely like an approach I've taken with the meetup groups that I've had in Tucson, you know, where initially I wanted to get everybody on Bitcoin because I saw there being a major issue that, you know, Bitcoin would solve in our community with the inflation and, we have a lot of immigrants and, people that can't access banking services. And I thought that'd be, a
Mm-hmm.
great solution for that. But, what it comes down to is a lot of people just aren't willing to take on that full responsibility, that comes with Bitcoin. And I agree with you. A lot of people just aren't ready for it, and it's not a good use of time to go out there and try and appeal to them. Um,
Hmm.
and it
Hmm.
doesn't
Hmm.
help, in the future what's coming too, because like we ultimately need to be focusing on who's going to have our backs for the coming storm.
That's it. That's it. You don't want fucking w- the sludge basically to drag you down. Fuck them.
Yeah. What
So
are what are
yeah.
some solutions that you're working on in that regard?
Well, I'm going to continue, obviously, my writing. I haven't had a chance to do any writing in August. I try and do at least a piece a month, but August was just a busy month. So I'm going to try and produce two pieces this month. One is actually called Bitcoin, Bitcoiners and Citadels, and it is the third chapter of the Jordan Peterson installment. So that'll go live on Bitcoin Magazine. And that was supposed to go out live last month, but I just couldn't get it finished. And I'm kind of glad that I didn't publish it because I only just recently read The Remnant, and I was like, "Fuck, this is perfect for." Sorry, I recently read Isaiah's job, so it's like the Remnant idea is perfect for this essay. So I'm doing that stuff. I'm continuing with the podcast, obviously. Um, what I do with Amber is will and always will be Bitcoin centric. I'm not going to try and appeal to the masses and make a crypto friendly fucking product. Crypto can go fuck itself. So I continue to do that, and I think if people who have either a platform or a way of speaking or a way of building useful products or technology and everything, if they take that same approach, like, we'll kill it. They just can't. You can't stop something like quote unquote the remnant. Like, it's impossible. So I don't know if that is that sort of the kind of answer that you were kind of leaning towards then, or not really.
No, I wasn't. It was just open ended question. Wasn't leading you anywhere. But
Yeah,
yeah,
no, I'm just not sure if I heard the question right. That's all.
no, I was just asking what you're working on in that regard. Yeah, I mean, I think that's huge, and we have historical precedents for this. So, like, I grew up in a really religious household and grew up reading about the Protestant Reformation quite a bit, and what people were doing and smuggling Bibles around. Um,
Hmm.
I mean, the Christianity in places like China and the Soviet Union is very, very interesting, and I think outlines like a really good playbook for what Bitcoiners can do in the future. And
Interesting. So can you talk me through a little bit of like what's happening in that space, like Christianity in those regions?
yeah, so like specifically in China, they have like state authorized religion, and they go
Hmm.
and like rewrite different religious texts, and you can see what's happening to the Uyghur population, where they're just like gathering up people and putting them in concentration camps. So they're trying to like, it's like technically legal, but if people are there from other countries talking about Christianity with the local people, they'll kick them out of the country. And then if there's people within the country, they get gulagged for doing that. And so what's happened is there's been a tremendous amount of growth in underground churches of people, creating these networks and meeting intentionally together, despite the state's really strong crackdowns against it. And you saw that like in the Soviet Union too, where they were had the Iron Curtain, that they were like smuggling Bibles across the border into it, or even the stuff like Alex Gladstein and those guys have been doing with like smuggling flash drives into North Korea with like Western movies on it. I think that stuff is
Hmm.
really, really interesting and fascinating.
I love that shit. I love that shit. That's real bravery, like in stark contrast to like what I saw on Twitter earlier today. That fucking loser who's like, I used the clockology you know, thing to build something on my to make the home screen of my Apple Watch my vaccine passport QR code. Oh, fucking wow! Like, and it's like that's the level of bravery that these people, these fucking brainwashed lemmings, think is actually bravery. It's so pathetic.
Yeah, I mean, it's been amazing. I have a rule, for myself. I try really hard not to bandwagon on anything, on any movement that's going, because it's just, amazing to watch these things. Like, when George Floyd died, a bunch of people posted like black squares, and it's just it's just completely meaningless. Like,
I know, man. I
like,
know. I know. Do you know what's funny? When that happened, so I was in Germany when that happened, and this girl that I'd like matched on Tinder or Bumble or some shit, we were supposed to catch up, and then she sends me this photo because she was at the stupid protest, and she's like, "Oh, I saw this guy and he looked like you. I thought it was you. How's your day going?" And I was like, I said, I wouldn't be caught dead at a dumbass protest like that. I said, "What's wrong with you?" And she's like, "Oh, this is a cause that means a lot to me." I said, "Yeah, it means a lot to you. Fucking 3 days out of your life, you fucking useless bitch." Like it was just, I didn't say it that badly, but I was like, whatever. Like you just fucking virtue signaling, you fucking guilty white retard. Like you're just one of those classic white guilt, like you know losers who, you've never done anything bad to a fucking black person. What are you out there fucking complaining about? It's like, shut up and go to work, do something useful. Like, these people are just, yeah, man, it really makes me sick.
yeah. Have you ever been in jail before?
Me, not in jail, no, no.
Gotcha. I used to volunteer in one. I fortunately somehow miraculously have never been in jail, not yet at least. The gulags are coming, but I used to volunteer in one, and it was pretty, wild walking in and having that door slam behind you, and just knowing that
Mm,
like you're on your own, and it was pretty nerve wracking to go in there. It was extremely rewarding, and it's amazing, like to sit down with these people that are human beings, and talk with them. Many of them having been there for really silly, stupid reasons. The state just, perpetrating violence against people arbitrarily for
yeah,
whatever reason. And I think it like kind of comes back to this, concept of people don't understand um, these things until they experience it. And this is something that really, bothers me about a lot of those movements of like, watching a cop commit an act of violence against somebody for a victimless crime, is something that's awful to watch. But then watching people just bandwagon into things and do absolutely nothing is also, awful to watch. And it's like, with Bitcoin, we're taking meaningful action
that's
here.
it. Well, yeah, I mean, these idiots, what they do is they don't understand the problem in the first place. So then they take, their crap understanding and they create a movement of the fucking problem, which completely defeats the purpose of, you know what what actually happened. So what happened was the state has, you know these overextended powers, and instead of acting to serve and protect, it acts to, enforce and fucking, command. um, and it goes and arbitrarily kills some guy, and whether he was a junkie or whatever the fucking story was, etc., it doesn't matter. You use fucking counterfeit money, whatever. You don't just kill a fucking person for that. So
Mhm.
that was the problem. The problem wasn't a fucking racial problem. It was these two scumbag fucking piece of shit cops who, had a level of immunity as the state henchmen, to behave in the way they're behaving.
Mhm.
And that's sort of, these idiots don't know how to articulate the problem, so then they go and create a fucking movement which then deranges, and we all know who runs the movement and what kind of people they are, etc., etc. And it's just like this is again, uh, no tether back to economic consequence, so they go and perform whatever actions they want, and they don't know that they're bad actions. So whether again BLM is a conspiracy or whether it's just a fucking unhinged uh, exogenous kind of effect of a complex system going awry, it doesn't matter. The outcome is the same. It's fucking ridiculous.
Yeah. It's a clown world,
It
watching
really is.
all this stuff.
It really is. It really is. It's a fucking joke.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, it's so nice to detach from that too, from that culture, and to just get out of this like uh stream of just nonsense. Like one of the reasons why I like Twitter is because it allows me to get in an echo chamber and kind of get away from all those, morons.
Yeah,
Because
it really is. It gives you a little bit of hope, right? Everyone says echo chambers are bad, but it's like, yeah, you know what? Echo chambers have their place, man. It's, you sort of find your tribe, and that's another one of the themes in this new article that I'm writing is the idea of tribalism. We are tribal. That's what we are. There's nothing bad about fucking tribalism. There's nothing bad about hanging out with people who you share common values with. There's absolutely fucking nothing wrong with that. But according to the lemmings, oh, you should spend time with people you don't like because we're all one. It's like, no, we're not. We're different, and it's a good thing. Do you not want diversity? Um, so yeah, I 100% concur with you. I think Bitcoin Twitter in particular is like it's a beautiful place, and it's just another one of those like nobody set it up. It wasn't centrally governed. It's not something that someone told us to get along. It's like it emerged out of nothing, and a bunch of people who found other people who were able to discover similar kernels of truth and form similar values. And we've created this global fucking community where I can basically go to any city now and say, "Hey, I'm here," and I can make quick, relatively deep relationships with people. Because I know that they have the ingredients of the kind of person that I want to be around. It's fucking phenomenal.
yeah, yeah, 100%. That idea of tribalism being natural is really interesting, and I think like it's really, I find it comical when people rail against capitalism, because I see capitalism is just nature happening of people making
It
decentralized.
l-
Yeah.
it literally is the most natural state of humanity. That's all it is. It's
And
like we exist to take capital in the form of time, energy, and resources, and produce it into something else. That is the process of capital. It's like perfectly natural behavior, but it's evil.
yeah, yeah, it's it's interesting to watch. I mean, we, from, or at least the way that I understand history, which might not be the most accurate, but we, for a certain amount of time, had a predominant monoculture in the United States, and this vision of like, uh, what's the word, national pride, seems to be breaking down substantially, and I think it kind of comes back to the idea of central planning always fails, and
Hmm.
the way it plays out is it's going to be really, really interesting to watch. It might be terrifying to watch if you're in some places, but I think it'll be good, ultimately in the long term. And it's, I mean, I'm just watching what's happening in Portland, Oregon. Like, I was born out there, lived out there a little bit, and it's just a hellscape, like
Oh,
communist.
really?
Oh yeah, they're like, it's like,
But it's capitalism's fault.
yeah, I mean, there's all these anarcho communists out there, that are running around throwing bombs at people and stuff. um,
Dumbest of the dumb.
yeah, but then there's places like Florida and Arizona that are not putting up with the nonsense, and I think are becoming freer over time. I mean, if you look at gun laws in the United States, it's pretty impressive of how they've changed over the past 50 years and have gotten a lot less restrictive, um, in most places. And it kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier, the silver lining of the totalitarians will push, and some places will become freer. I think the hard part is just finding those places to live and kind of pull out for a while.
Well, this is the example of why something like um, what do you call it? Something like Bitcoin Twitter is so important, and how we're able to just figure out ways to route around, stupidity. And I put the state squarely in the bucket of complete stupidity. So
Yeah. It really is stupidity. That's a good way to describe it.
yeah, that was so that was actually you listen to the podcast when I released it on Friday, but like it was I kind of try to reframe the the argument of these elite parasites. So these parasites, running the show. I've tried to reframe it as I called them the idiots, just running around like idiots. That's it. So and that's effectively what we've got. We don't have like a cabal of these intelligent operators who really know what they're doing and they're executing a plan. They're just fucking idiots running around like idiots, making bad decisions, and we're paying the price for their bad decisions. And it's no wonder they don't realize they're making bad decisions, so they just double down on these things because they know it's right. Like it's classic fucking child, you know, playground behavior, but just with bigger weapons. That's it.
Yeah. It's something that I'm watching roll out, which I think is going to be really funny, is the vax mandates and how those come out in the United States. And I'm specifically like thinking, so they tried to do them in Tucson, and they just recently found that it was illegal, or somebody from the state government said that. But what was going to happen was they were going to lose a very large portion of their city employees as a result of it, and almost come to the point of not being able to function. And if the airlines do something like that, they're not going to be able to function. We're already seeing it, where flights are getting canceled all over the place. And if they require people to all be vaccinated to fly, they're gonna cease to exist unless they get bailouts from the federal government, which I wouldn't push it
Hmm.
past it. But it is funny, like they're almost intentionally sabotaging themselves. um
Yeah, but I mean, what a fucking circus.
Definitely look forward to reading your stuff, coming out in the future. Where can people follow your work?
So people can. I think the last time we did a podcast, I was at Aleks Svetski. Now I'm at Ghost of Svetsky. So I live again. I think I'm going to start a trend. So I heard that Bitcoin Becker is now Ghost of Becker,
And
and
Francis
Francis
too.
Francis just set up Ghost of Francis. So here we go. It's fucking hilarious. So so let's see. So that's the main thing, and I generally what I say to people is that if you want to see my more brutal self, that's where you want to go. Then svetsky.medium.com is my Medium blog. And then I'm starting to do a lot more writing now for Bitcoin Magazine. And actually, what I should also mention, I always forget to shill my own damn business, but I run a company called Amber, which is the world's first dollar cost averaging app for Bitcoin only. And we will be available across 44 states, Arizona included, by the end of September. So we're in private beta now for the US, and it is the best place to stack Bitcoin because we just got the coolest fucking features. So you've got like your daily, weekly, fortnightly, and or you guys call it bi-weekly and monthly, auto DCA. But we've also got auto buy the dip, so you can set some if this then that kind of rules. So like if Bitcoin falls 3%, within 24 hours, buy me this much Bitcoin. So you can like totally automate it, and we've got an automated withdrawal to your own cold storage. So that way you can like set the rules, set your DCA, have the money go in, and just fucking forget about it. And you'll just like be stacking it or be going into your cold storage wallet without you even thinking.
Nice. I got one
So
question, one final question for you.
yeah, sure.
Why do you think the exchanges aren't supporting Lightning yet? And will you guys?
Because it's not there's nothing really like okay. So let me give you a pragmatic answer to that. So uh, for a large exchange, they're generally so, and this is notwithstanding the fact that exchanges like Coinbase and shit are just enemies of Bitcoin. But let's assume that they're not enemies of Bitcoin. Let's assume they just look at it from a economic standpoint. They're like, okay, what could we do? We could, launch this kind of product, which is like a debit card, or we can launch a credit card. We could launch this, that. These would generate this much income, or we could build, some sort of lightning functionality in there so that people can, I don't know, what more easily withdraw or deposit their Bitcoin. I don't know what the killer feature there for the Lightning piece is as an exchange. They're going to just deprioritize it, and they're going to prioritize other money making features before they prioritize um, the Lightning feature. Now, for us, we don't have Lightning support yet because we batch withdrawals, and for us, there's no real need. There's never anyone really withdrawing small amounts on the app. They DC over a month and then they withdraw in a batch. Um, we will do Lightning withdrawals at some point, but it's not like super high up on the list because, like, for us as a business, again, it's like we're treating Bitcoin as a savings product, and what you want to do with a savings product is you want to accumulate some savings and then you want to claim your savings, and that can still be done on chain. As that starts to become more difficult to be done on chain, we're absolutely going to allow people to move it off on Lightning, but that also does raise the barrier of I guess not barrier of entry, but like it raises the technical requirements for a user. Like, our users are only just starting to catch up to self custody with an all Bitcoin wallet. Then if they're going to do it with a Lightning wallet and swap it back to Bitcoin and stuff, it starts to add complexity. So it's just, yeah, the pragmatic answer is that there's always priorities in the business, and you need to do stuff. I don't think, like, see, we're a 9-person team, like, or 10-person team now. We have 3 engineers. Like, we have to be super fucking strict with what is the next piece that we've got to build that adds the maximum amount of value, that delivers value for not only the customer but also the business, so we can actually make money out of it, and prioritize that first. So we run unlimited resources. Now, a company like a Kraken or a Coinbase or something that's fucking rolling in billions of dollars, they don't have that kind of limitation. Like, they can spin up a fucking team and they can implement that very quickly, but they clearly don't care enough to do that. So there's a pragmatic answer, and then there's the nuance to that pragmatic answer is that, um, yeah, some people shouldn't have that excuse because they have the capital to do so. Like, if I had their kind of capital, like, that'd be easy. I'd run a parallel team, just solve this problem, please.
Interesting. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, like, what are the major benefits, I guess, in your mind for a consumer to have, like, when you talk about Lightning, is that Lightning deposits and withdrawals, or like what feature is it exactly that you had in mind when you asked that question?
Yeah, I was more so thinking Lightning deposits and withdrawals.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, I don't know. I just saw a tweet storm on Twitter about it of people trashing Kraken and other exchanges. So I was just curious, but I haven't thought of
Yeah.
that. I mean, it would make sense, like, for people that are dealing with small amounts of money, in probably not the United States and other developed countries, to want support for that. But I don't know how practical it is because, yeah.
Well, the thing is, yeah, like, to play, on the side of the rant, it's that, hey, a company like Kraken, they've got 2,000 fucking employees, for fuck's sake. They have an engineering team of 250 people. Like, we've got an engineering team of 3 people. Like, I can make the argument that, hey, dude, I don't have the resources. I'll get to it, but I've got other things on the roadmap. Whereas Kraken can't say that, oh, they've got 250 engineers working on what? Adding another shitcoin? Like, go fuck yourself. Like, we've got 3 engineers and we're adding resources. Like, we're putting our effort into making sure we have as many fiat on ramps as possible, because that's more important, like, than creating a lightning off ramp, which is, take your Bitcoin off. Like, you can get your Bitcoin out on Amber. That problem is already solved. But what we want to do is we want to create more on ramps, and we want to create greater coverage. And that's where engineering resources are going to. Whereas Kraken, they've already got on ramps, they've already got all this shit. And instead of building a lightning withdrawal capacity, they go and add penis coin 101. Like that is dumb as fuck. Like we're not going and doing that. So that's I guess where I would definitely take the side of the person who made that argument.
Yeah. Yeah. Screw the shitcoin casinos.
Dude, they're just morons. So anyway, like if we can do it, they can do it. Like, and if we can somehow, find the resources to build shit, then that's what they need to fucking do that as well.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to it rolling out in the US. I'll be following that. And
Absolutely, man.
thanks again for coming on. It's a lot of fun.
Absolutely, anytime, brother.
Sounds good. That was a fun time with Aleks, and I always appreciate him coming on. I learned so much from him, and like I said, he has been very instrumental in helping me in my journey, through his writings, through his podcast, just being a solid Bitcoiner in the Bitcoin space. It was cool meeting him in person for the first time at the Kaiser event, and yeah, I think what he talked about in this episode, as far as reaching out to the Remnant, I think that's incredibly important. There's a lot of people that aren't willing to come to grips with what's happening right now, and the fiat monetary system's unraveling. It's going to create a lot of upheaval. It already is. It's going to get worse, and Bitcoin is a solution to that. We can opt out of the nonsense right now, and that doesn't mean just buying it and having it sit in BlockFi or sit on an exchange. It means like actually becoming a Bitcoiner and seeking to be self-sovereign, to take custody of your own keys, and to start moving in a direction of self-responsibility, to not be a victim to the state anymore, and the other institutions that are out there that are trying to control you. And I think we're creating an incredibly powerful movement with the Arizona Bitcoin meetup scene. We've got 3 meetups in 3 different cities going right now, and there's cool things rolling out of it. We're working on building a circular economy in Tucson. Sierra Vista's working on some, really cool stuff in regards to self-sovereignty and just creating a cool community out there. And Phoenix has, they're ready to roll out a Citadel pretty much. They've got some really cool stuff going on there. And, going forward, I think it's incredibly important to find people that are like-minded and are willing to make a stand, regardless of whether they're Bitcoiners or not. And a lot of people out there are a lot closer to becoming Bitcoiners, and those are the people that I think are worth time of investing to teach and really help them along, and also to learn from, because there's a lot of people that have a lot of skill sets that are valuable, like being self-sustainable, farming, food, production, all sorts of stuff that is really, really cool. Self-defense. But yeah, anyways, big thank you to Aleks for coming on. Make sure to follow him on Twitter, Ghost of Svetski. Hopefully he's still on Twitter. He might have to move to Ghost of Svetski eventually, because he can get pretty brutal, and Twitter just has it out for some people. They've kicked off Skeef like 4 times. But yeah, have a good one.